Part 2 of Katha Upanishad begins with Nachiketa asking the third boon. Nachiketa said to Yama, "There is this doubt about a man when he is dead. Some say he exists, others say he does not. I would like to learn the truth from you." Nachiketa wished to know whether or not there was an immortal substance in a man that survived death of the body. In other words, he asked for the most treasured secret of the Vedic wisdom, the secret of Atman, its nature, its origin, and its destiny. The first two boons apply to an unenlightened person caught in the web of duty, happiness, and the world around him. According to Vedic rules, such a person should fulfill his moral and religious obligations and purify his heart. When he finds the happiness of the universe to be transitory in nature, he becomes entitled to cultivate Atma Vidya or knowledge of Atman or self-knowledge. Yama was an experienced teacher. He knew that a teacher must first test the fitness of his student before giving him the knowledge of the secret of Atman. If the student is to assimilate this knowledge, he must have cultivated a keen sense of the ability to discern the difference between the true and false, also known as the ability to discriminate between true and false, known as Viveka in Sanskrit. Along with Viveka, the student should also have cultivated the capability of detachment. Detachment here means the ability to give up mental bias and opinions and accept the teachings of the Guru. Besides, the student should also have a sincere longing for truth and a tranquil mind. He must have renounced all desire for the perishable pleasures of the world. Therefore, Yama offered Nachiketa various temptations, such as sons, grandchildren, wealth, world emperor, long life, beautiful woman, and so on. But the young aspirant Nachiketa, endowed with sharp intelligence and calm mind, discarded them all. Since he was a seeker of truth, he persisted in his determination to pierce the veil of ignorance that hides Atmavidya or self-knowledge. Yama finally realized that Nachiketa was ready to be a worthy student, and Yama granted him his desired boon. Yama taught that the self or Atman in man is none other than the Brahman or consciousness that pervades the universe. This Brahman is described in the Vedas by the sacred symbol of Om. Yama said, "The Vedas declare, and I'd state, that the goal of tapasya, which all brahmacharis desire, is Om." Let us see the meaning of the word tapasya and the meaning of the word Om. During the Vedic period, students desirous of learning would live with their teacher in the Gurukul, observing self-control and celibacy, and perform tapasya. Tapasya is a Sanskrit word. In English, it means austerity. Tapasya in general usage means your resolve and the constant working towards that goal. However, from a spiritual standpoint, it is related to control of mind, speech, and the senses. The definition of tapasya is found in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, verse number 14, 15, and 16. A question arises: what is Om? What did Yama mean when he said the goal of tapasya is Om? Om is the most sacred word of the Vedas. Om is the sound symbol of Brahman or consciousness. Therefore, Om is also called Nad Brahman or sound Brahman. Yama continued with his teachings and said, the Atman is not born, it does not die, it has not sprung from anything, nor anything has sprung from it. Birthless, eternal, everlasting, and ancient, it is not killed when the body is killed. Atman, or the Self, is the all pervading consciousness and the inner core of all things, great and small. Though dwelling in the body, it is bodiless. Though associated with changing things, it is unchanging. One cannot know Atman by studying or through intellect. However, when the mind becomes pure through devotion and by performing dharmic acts, through tapasya and meditation, then the mind becomes serene and it can then reflect the majesty of Atman. Control of mind and senses and not their repression is the most effective spiritual discipline for a man wishing to attain his spiritual goal. Yama gave the vivid illustration of a chariot, which can take the rider to his destination only when it is well built and when the driver is endowed with mental capabilities, is able to restrain the impetuous horses by means of strong reins and guide them along the designated roads. Yama said, know the Atman to be the master of the chariot. The body is the chariot, the buddhi, the charioteer, the mind is the reins. The senses, they say, are the horses, the objects are the roads. The wise call the Atma, when united with the body, senses, and the mind, the enjoyer. Let us see what it means. The body is compared to a chariot, inside of which is seated the Self, the Atman. The chariot serves the purpose of taking to the destination the Master, who is the Supreme Self, the Atman, which is temporarily identified with the body, mind, and the senses. The word buddhi denotes the discriminative faculty of the mind. Buddhi is the intellect that is endowed with the ability to discern the difference between true and false, or the ability to discriminate between true and false. The Vedantic model of the human body divides the sense organs into two groups, the outer and the inner. The outer group comprises of Karma Indriya and Gyan Indriya, while the inner group is called Antarkarana. Karmendriya is the group of organs of action, which comprises of organs of motion, organs of speech, organs of evacuation, and organs of procreation. In other words, Karmendriya comprises of hands, feet, mouth, rectum, and the genitals. On the other hand, organs that make up the Gyanindriya or organs of perception, they are the eyes, nose, ears, tongue, and the skin. And finally, the inner group, which is known as Antarkarana, which comprises of Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, and Ahamkara, where Manas is the mind which causes us to think. Buddhi is the intellect, which is endowed with the ability to discern the difference between right and wrong. Chitta is memory, and Ahamkara is the ego or I consciousness. It is in this context that we need to interpret the chariot metaphor. And what the metaphor means is, through the mind, buddhi directs the senses to their respective objects as the buddhi guides the senses along the right path. Let us see the teachings further. In a distracted mind, buddhi loses its discriminative ability and the senses become uncontrolled like the vicious horses of the charioteer. In a controlled mind, buddhi possesses the ability to discriminate and the senses come under the control like the horses of a charioteer. In a distracted mind, buddhi loses its ability to discriminate and therefore always remains impure, and the jiva never attains the goal but enters into round of rebirths. In a controlled mind, the buddhi possesses discrimination and therefore always remains pure, and then the jiva attains his goal from which he is not reborn again. But what is the goal? The goal is supreme position of Brahman, the all-pervading consciousness. What it means is one must have control of the mind, and a controlled mind can lead to the goal of realization of Brahman. Tapasya or control of mind is possible through yoga. Atman dwells in the heart of all and is a man's innermost essence. It animates his physical, vital, and mental activities. Atman is the unaltered witness of his experiences during the waking, dreaming, and the sleep state. Though appearing to be identified with the functions of the body and the mind, it is beyond the body. It is beyond the mind. The attributes of the body do not cling to Atman, just as the water does not cling to a lotus leaf. The knowledge of deathless Atman, which Nachiketa wished to acquire from Yama, is itself immortality. Immortality is not produced by this knowledge. No. Anything that is produced has a beginning and has an ending and cannot be immortal. The self, Atman, always exists undimmed and undiminished, neither waxing nor waning through a man's good or bad actions. But like the sun, the Atman can be hidden by a cloud of ignorance and is revealed when the ignorance is destroyed by knowledge. An enlightened person endowed with Atman knowledge attains deathlessness, though he may discard his body at will like a man taking off his garments. Atma knowledge bestows liberation from suffering of worldly existence. When a mortal renounces his desire, he attains immortality. As I mentioned earlier, that knowledge of Brahman itself is immortality. It is reiterated by Vedic teachers that the truth of Atman is revealed when a qualified aspirant, instructed by an enlightened teacher, practices the discipline of self-control or tapasya and meditation. Having received this wisdom taught by the king of death and the entire process of yoga, Nachiketa became free from death and attained Brahman. With that, we come to the end of Katha Upanishad. For more such stories from the Upanishads and Purans and more information about Vedanta, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Veda Gyan. Veda Gyan is committed to dissemination of Vedic knowledge. Learn Vedic prayers, mantras, stotra, and learn about consciousness. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page as well as Instagram. Namaskar.